Greetings YouTube, Simon here, welcome back to the channel, and we're continuing on with the Final Fantasy VII Remake hype today with some new gameplay that's materialised online recently, the last day or so. And this is similar to some gameplay that appeared a few days ago, but that was all in Japanese. This is the English localisation of exactly the same gameplay, I believe. So this comes courtesy to us of Kotaku. I'll leave a link to their video in the description. But this gameplay is all post-demo, so let's go ahead and get stuck in, and I'll share my thoughts on it as we go. Again, you can check out the original video if you want to watch it yourself without my commentary and reaction. So, as you can see, and by the way, this is the first time I'm watching it right now with you guys, we're picking up in the immediate aftermath of the events of the demo, where the party has completely and utterly obliterated the reactor, with a little help from Shinra, of course. And this is something that's a little bit different than in the original game. In the original game, our time spent in Midgar as we make our way over to the Avalanche hideout after we've blown up the reactor is very brief. We really don't get to explore the after effects or the reactions of the people around the place at all. So the fact that we get to do that here in the remake, I think, is just a sign of what we can expect in terms of the fact that the game is really being fully fleshed out in terms of the story and the events that occurred in the original but never really were dwelt on all that much. So this is Chapter 2, and Chapter 2 is also, as far as I'm aware, like Chapter 1, going to be a very story-driven chapter. Side quests and what have you, the mercenary quest system, as far as I'm aware, don't actually begin until Chapter 3. So there's probably not going to be a whole lot of exploration in this particular chapter. And as you can see, there are going to be enemy encounters, mostly involving enemies that we've seen before in the game's first chapter. By the way, that first part that we played through in the demo, there's a few people online that have played a little bit more than that from other builds of the game, and they're saying that bits have been cut out from the demo in order to preserve, I guess, a few surprises for when the full game releases. So don't think that because you played through the demo that you've seen everything that Chapter 1 has to offer. You haven't. Yeah, so the shock troopers are one of the tougher enemies, weren't they, from the demo? Looks like they're making their return here in Chapter 2. I've got to tell you, I'm so pumped for this game. I really, really am. I cannot wait. Yeah, the title of this video, by the way, is Tifa, Aerith, Summons, and More. So we're going to be getting to see quite a bit in this video, I'd imagine. Looks like there's a new enemy here as well, the Huntsman. A soldier with a shield. I've got to think, I don't think that's an enemy from the original game. Unless my mind is playing tricks on me, I'm pretty sure that's a new enemy. It's got like a stun baton. It's like one of those enemies that isn't particularly a boss fight, but is still a kind of special encounter, maybe like the sweeper enemies. Yeah, there's one thing for sure, look at this cloud stun there, is that battles in the remake are much more of a spectacle, aren't they, than they were in the original game. They take a lot more strategy and time to get through. Is this the same Huntsman? Or was the... I think it's switched over to another clip here, hasn't it? Oh, yeah. Looks tough. Yeah, it's interesting. I've had quite a few people telling me over the various comments about how they just got destroyed in the demo. So it'd be interesting to know if Square do some balance changes, but also there are folks as well on the opposite end of the spectrum that are disappointed that there's no hard mode available. Normal is the current hardest difficulty. I'd be surprised if a hard mode isn't available, at least eventually, probably patched in or something. Probably charged for as DLC. So what we're seeing now, the game has obviously cut ahead here to Chapter 7. So this is the assault on the next reactor, where Tifa and Barrett have joined Cloud. Oh, I should say where Cloud has joined Tifa and Barrett, because he's the mercenary here. But yeah, so we've skipped out chapters 3, 4, 5, and 6, but that's actually kind of an interesting thing to talk about briefly. Because in the original game, you go from the first reactor bombing, you go to the hideout, you know, you take a ride on the train, you get to the hideout at Tifa's 7th Heaven at the bar. You do a bit of strategizing together with the party, and then you literally just go straight on them to the next reactor. But here in the remake, there's actually like 3 or 4 chapters in between each reactor bombing, so it sounds to me like there's going to be a whole lot of new gameplay, hence the reason I'd imagine why they haven't shown us that. Maybe even quite a bit of new story that isn't part of the original game. So whether this is where we get introduced to the new characters such as Roach, one of the other soldiers that's been introduced into the remake, or just things that we don't know anything about yet, we'll have to wait and see. But Square quite wisely, I'd imagine, keeping all of that stuff under wraps right now. So we've literally skipped from chapter 2 to chapter 7 here.
It looks like a few of its components are still in transit.
Right now, they are really focused on the elements that we know from the original. So here we can see Airbuster, of course, the plans for Airbuster. I've spoken about this with the Japanese footage.
This the console you talking about?
And unlike in the original game, it's not just a direct boss fight. You can see that Cloud used a key card there. You can actually disable certain weaponry from the Airbuster boss before you battle it. And you have to make choices as to which weapons you actually disable. So that will affect the encounter. This is where they push all 3 buttons, isn't it? In the original game, it's back.
No, Tifa leads.
Oh, fine. After you, girl.
Gotta get past level 1 first, right? 3, 2, 1.
I'll tell you what, it's little things like that I really do love. Oh, that's such a small mini game in the original Final Fantasy VII. It really is. It takes like 5 seconds and then you never do it again throughout the rest of the game. But the fact that they are including little details like that in the remake is a real nod to the original, and I think it's going to be very special for the fans. I really do. Yeah, so what I was saying was you're going to have to strategize depending on not only the boss fight itself, but on the choices you make in what you disable from the boss fight. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's a trophy or an achievement of some kind, if it's possible, which I expect it will be, to defeat Airbuster with all of its weapons still active, so the player not having disabled any of them. Which I guess is a kind of hard mode for players that are after that type of thing. Now, unlike in the original Final Fantasy VII, here we have a hologram of Heidegger mocking the party as they take on the Techno Soldier here. And as we all know by now, every boss fight is going to be a huge spectacle in Final Fantasy VII Remake. We've seen 3 of them so far. The Scorpion Sentinel, of course, who's in the demo, the Airbuster here, and then the Apps encounter. Although Apps is now called Abzu, I believe. Although it's possible he was meant to be called that in the original English localization of Final Fantasy VII, but the translation for that game was pretty poor, really, wasn't it?
Get him.
So a few of those errors, I think, have been corrected. And here we get to see Leviathan in action. So Leviathan is one of the summons being brought across from the original game. And of course, summons were not available at all in Midgar in the original Final Fantasy VII. But that was never going to be the case here in the remake, which focused solely on the Midgar section of the original game. Oh, there was actually one of the boss fight that we saw a brief clip of, wasn't it? I don't want to spoil it because, in my opinion, it is a bit of a spoiler since it doesn't occur in the original game, but I'm assuming that the boss fight, if you've seen the footage, you'll know what I'm talking about, is a fight that occurs right towards the end of the remake in the Shinra headquarters, and that looked amazing. We saw like 2 or 3 seconds of it, but it looked incredible, it really did. But the whole game does, it really does. I just cannot get bored or fed up of watching Final Fantasy VII Remake content. I really cannot. Yeah, it's really living up to its name, this boss, isn't it? The Airbuster. Just flying over the reactor platforms.
Don't overdo it.
Need my help, Leviathan.
All set. Giving it my all. Pouring on.
Of course, in the original, that's the point where Cloud is separated from the rest of the party and goes and meets Aerith properly in her church. And now we've skipped ahead again, of course. So this is the next boss fight they're showing us, which is again against Abzu. Apps in the original. And this is occurring in Chapter 10. So the last events that we just witnessed against Airbuster and in the previous reactor, as I say, were in Chapter 7. So we've skipped through Chapters 8 and 9. And presumably those are the chapters that are going to involve Cloud and Aerith making their way through the slums, through Wall Market, the whole cross-dressing situation, and, you know, meeting up with Don Corneo and all of that stuff, and the Honeybee Inn, or whatever it's now called. All of that's going to be occurring in those chapters between 7 and 10. And eventually the party reunites, gets thrust into the sewers, and into this battle against whatever this creature is. Maybe we'll learn more about who Abzu is in the remake. I really hope we do. I've always speculated that it's some kind of amalgamation, an experiment that's gone wrong from Hojo. One of Hojo's failed experiments, perhaps. He's got chains around its arms and stuff, but we just don't get anything about him in the original game. Absolutely nothing. We're literally going through the sewers and bang, he jumps on us out of the blue, and then the party never mentions it again once the battle's over with. So yeah, it'd be cool to get some more lore about this fellow. So Abzu, it appears, is weak to fire. We saw that in previous footage as well. And I'm assuming that Ifrit is going to be summoned here because we've seen that. I love the way he just jumps about there. It's kind of like a pig creature, isn't it? He's got these trotters. As he was jumping around there all over the place. I feel like he's got pig DNA in him.
Get fired up.
My turn.
Yeah, I'll admit a pretty strange pig. The creature design, it's just incredible, it really is. I like the way that his horn is burning because of all the fire attacks from the party. That's a nice touch, that is. I think this is his tsunami ability. Yep.
How's this?
Oh wow, you can actually interrupt his abilities. Yeah, Tsunami is a classical signature ability of this boss from the original Final Fantasy VII. Where he brings all that dirty sewer water onto the party, and this is it. This is Ifrit. I'm very happy that Ifrit looks quite remarkably different to the Ifrit of Final Fantasy 15. At least it shows that they have made this game and built it from scratch. They haven't tried to cheat out there by just bringing in models from the other PS4 Final Fantasy 15 title. The fact that this is Chapter 10 makes me wonder how many chapters there are going to be in Final Fantasy 7 Remake. I'm thinking in the original game, this is really shortly before the events of the Shinra building. I reckon there's probably about 2 or 3 chapters in the remake. I'm just guessing there after this battle, unless they do what they do between chapters 2 and 7 and just add in a whole load of new story that we don't yet know about. Okay, folks, so what do you think of the new footage then that we've just watched? And how many chapters do you think are going to be in Final Fantasy VII Remake? So remember, this is Chapter 10. Based on the original game, I'm going to expect there to be about 15 chapters. I would suggest that the Abs fight in the original is about 2/3 the way through Midgar. But I suppose that Square could put in a load of extra chapters involving new story and that they're keeping under wraps right now. Like I say, I expect they've done that between chapters 2 and 7, because that's quite a few chapters there that wouldn't be able to be filled, I don't think, with the small amount of story that's available from the original game. So maybe they'll do something similar, but if not, then we'll be heading over to the Shinra building after some, you know, pretty major events after we leave the sewers here, but I'd imagine about 3 or 4, maybe 5 more chapters. But yeah, what do you think of the new footage, guys? And are you excited by the gameplay that we've watched? Like I say, I really do enjoy the extra attention to detail that's being given here, especially, you know, with chapter 2, as Cloud is going through the leftovers, if you like, of that sector after the reactor has blown up, and we're just going to have to really explore the aftermath of everything that's happened there because of the consequence of Avalanche's actions. And I know that we're shown that it's Shinra that actually blows up the reactor, but Avalanche don't know that. As far as they're concerned, it was their bomb that did it, and they're going to have to deal with the consequences. But yeah, please do share your thoughts down in the comment section below, and I'll catch you next time for more Final Fantasy VII Remake updates. If there's any new footage or gameplay trailers or anything now between today and the release date, I'll make sure to share my reactions. But thanks for stopping by. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.
This sounds like you're having fun.